I rise to conclude the debate on this Fiscal Management and Accountability Amendment Bill 2021. Having listened to the contributions of my colleagues on this side of the House and honourable members from the opposite side of the House, and I tried, Mr. Speaker, to pay as keen attention as I possibly could, hoping perhaps, particularly from my colleagues on the opposite side of the House, that I might hear arguments addressing the merits of the bill before us. Regrettably, Mr. Speaker, for the greater part, we were treated to a veritable cacophony of invectives, innuendos, and irrelevances, none of which had anything to do with the contents and merits of the bill. And that, Mr. Speaker, I consider to be most regrettable. Because, as I said in my opening statement, notwithstanding the apparent simplicity of the bill, I do believe that the bill addresses very fundamental issues which merited or would merit serious deliberative consideration by this House. And given the seriousness of the bill, there could be no greater indication of which side of the House is committed to addressing the people's business than the presence in this honorable House in the current moment. Look around, sir. On our side, recognizing how important a matter this is, we have gone through, one speaker after another, the various provisions of the bill. We have listened to the presentations made by our colleagues on the other side. We have responded to those and addressed them conclusively. But the other side, notwithstanding their protestations, saw no value in staying to see this debate to its culmination. That is the level of importance they attach to this matter. Notwithstanding, Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, notwithstanding that for the greater part, the presentations from the opposite side evaded the issue and engaged more so in personal insults and irrelevant noises. There were one or two particular points which were very telling. In particular, Mr. Speaker, it struck a special cordant note when I heard the honourable member, Mr. Roysdale Ford, say that the 2015 bill that amended the FMA in the first instance, he said that the 2015 amendment displayed the ethos of the APNU-AFC government. And I believe, sir, he was right. The 2015 amendment did display in full abundance the ethos of the APNU-AFC government. And what might we ask, sir, is that ethos? Mr. Speaker, if the last 5 years have taught the people of Guyana and the world anything at all, it is that nothing that is said by the APNU AFC can be believed. Absolutely nothing. Mr. Speaker, they regaled the nation with their commitment, with their self-proclaimed commitment to consultation and inclusivity. And having regaled the world with their self-proclaimed embrace of consultation and inclusivity, they proceeded, sir, to receive a first tranche of 6 nominees for the chairmanship of GCOM, 6 fine and upstanding citizens of Guyana, and promptly rejected them with the disparagement that they were not fit and proper. They proceeded, sir, to receive a second 6, and proceeded promptly to say this second 6 was still not fit and proper. They proceeded, sir, to receive a third 6, bringing us to the grand total of not 6, not 12, but 18 nominees for the position of chairmanship of GCOM. And they dismissed this third 6 as once again not being fit and proper. Mr. Speaker, these were the people who were beating their chests and proclaiming to the world how much they believed in consultation and how much they believed in inclusivity. And they dismissed 18 fine, upstanding Guyanese citizens in whom the People's Progressive Party reposed sufficient confidence to be nominated as chairman of GCOM. They rejected all 18 of them as being not fit and proper. To the extent, sir, that they brought the phrase fit and proper almost into ridicule. Billboards were set up all over the country with the phrase fit and proper as if it was something to be laughed at. Fit, oh yes, it wasn't proper. It wasn't proper. It became fit and proper. That's right, I believe there was one on David Street, Kitty. A big sign that said fit and proper, ridiculing and mocking. Ridiculing and mocking 18 fine and upstanding Guyanese citizens as not being fit and proper. Those 18 Guyanese citizens are still around. They remember. They remember. They remember that the APNUAFC said to the world, we don't consider you fit and proper, but yet we believe in inclusivity. We believe in consultation. And they proceeded, sir, unilaterally and unconstitutionally to appoint a selection, a proxy of theirs, whose appointment, sir, was subsequently to be repudiated by the highest court of our land. This, sir, from the APNU AFC that proclaimed and continues to proclaim their belief in constitutionality, their belief and their respect for the Constitution, belief in and respect for the Constitution. their embrace of the principles of inclusivity and consultation. Sir, if that were not enough to display the ethos, if that were not enough to display the ethos of the APNU AFC, sir, fast forward to December 2018. December 21st to be precise. Mr. Speaker, the constitutional arrangements surrounding a no-confidence motion are crystal clear. They are written in English language, in the language of our Constitution, in our official language, English language, plain and simple English language. It's the same Constitution that they're now waving in the air, pretending to be champions and defenders of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the provisions of our Constitution are crystal clear. And even if those provisions were not clear, the traditions of Westminster Parliament, enshrined through centuries of parliamentary practice, are well known and highly respected. And those provisions require that upon the successful moving of a no-confidence motion, a general election shall be called within 90 days. Mr. Speaker, if you want to get a display, yet another example of the ethos of the APNU AFC, on the night that they lost the no-confidence motion, they rapidly assembled in a room at the Parliament chambers, acknowledged that they had lost the motion. That press conference is still available. Today's technology captured that moment live and direct for the entire world to see. They went to a room in the Parliament chamber. They went to a room in the Parliament chambers. They acknowledged that they had lost the no-confidence motion. They accepted the consequences of that defeat. They said, we are disappointed, but we will respect the result and proceed with the consequences of a no-confidence motion, and an election will be held in 90 days. Mr. Speaker, that was captured by video. That was captured and recorded for posterity. If I'm not mistaken, sir, no less a person than the then Prime Minister presided over that press conference. Mr. Speaker, if you would like yet another example, of the ethos of the APNU AFC, sir, very swiftly, within a matter of 48 hours after they accepted the results of the no-confidence motion, and indicated that they will abide by our Constitution, which required an election within 90 days. Mr. Speaker, they suddenly discovered that 33 was no longer greater than 32. And suddenly discovered and announced to the world that they were no longer. There was something about half and add half and minus half and round out and round up. They suddenly discovered, sir, they suddenly engaged in a bizarre attempt at arithmetic trickery. Mr. Speaker, ethos of the APNU AFC, the ethos, if you want to see the nature of the APNU AFC. And Mr. Speaker, the list goes on. The list goes on. On the 2nd of March 2020, Guyana went to the polls. By well-established tradition, Mr. Speaker, at the end of poll, every polling station counts, observed by party representatives, and something called a statement of poll is produced, signed by the presiding officials, signed by the party representatives, published on the wall of the polling station, taken away by the party representatives and the GCOM officials, and tallied up. Mr. Speaker, it is once again a matter of very simple arithmetic, a simple question of adding up the statements of poll to generate your results. Mr. Speaker, within a matter of hours, anybody in possession of their statements of poll would know the results. Mr. Speaker, we are now in January, February. In less than a month's time, it will be a year since the 2nd of March. Up to today, the statements of poll allegedly in the possession of the APNUFC, which according to them show a result different from what was declared, those statements of poll remain a phantom-like figment of imagination. Up to today, they are unable to produce their statements of poll. The ethos, they claim that they won. They insist, they beat their chests, they thump their chests and say we won, but they cannot produce their statements of poll to display this victory. That, sir, is the ethos of the APNUFC. The world is watching. The world knows that not a single word uttered, not a single word uttered by the APNUFC can be believed. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member, Mr. Ramjatan, waxed lyrically about the noble intentions of his government when they brought this 2015 amendment. In his speech just a few minutes ago, he spoke about their respect for the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this is the same honorable member, sir, who went to the Ministry of Home Affairs mere days after the 2nd of March, addressed his staff in a speech that was recorded. And I will quote from that speech, sir. I will quote from that speech. He said, and I quote, "It is with sadness that I want to say a couple of words to you. I don't know, although I rather suspect that tomorrow might be a declaration that the numbers were against us. I am prepared to accept and move on, and I wanted not to miss the opportunity, because if it happens tomorrow, I will be out, and I might not have said a word of thank you." So far, so good, sir. So far, so good. So far, so good, sir. Until a few days later, when he appeared, and mind you, sir, that speech was captured, a recording that is now available for the entire, that became immediately available for the entire world to hear. Mr. Speaker, mere days later, Mere days later, the honorable member appeared on a radio program hosted by a Trinidadian channel, Mr. Fazir Mohammed. Mr. Speaker, by that time, it appears that the honorable gentleman was no longer quite as sad. The ethos apparently was gone. On this occasion, sir, when asked about his acknowledgement that the numbers were against them and that a declaration was about to be made that they had lost the election, the honorable member conveniently apparently forgot what he had said and said instead that he was not, in fact, conceding or acknowledging that they had lost. He was saying farewell because he was about to relocate to the office of the Prime Minister. Ethos of the APNU AFC, sir. So when they come here and they claim that they are champions and guardians of constitutionality, when they come here and claim to be friends of the constitutional agencies, Mr. Speaker, the world is watching, and the world knows full well that not a single word uttered by anybody on that side of the House can be trusted. The world knows this full well, sir. So they come and they claim...
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of order. The honourable member is impugning my character personally, and I think the House needs to recognize him. Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw any inferences that might have been mistakenly interpreted as directed to the distinguished Deputy Speaker. I believe I did make reference to the APNU AFC, and I have no doubt he's proud. I have no doubt that the distinguished Deputy Speaker is proud not to be associated with the APNU AFC. So, Mr. Speaker, when they claim that they are champions and protectors and friends of the constitutional agency, they claim that this 2015 amendment was intended to give these entities autonomy and intended to remove the Ministry of Finance and the executive from reviewing and cutting the budgets of these constitutional agencies. Once again, sir, nothing could be further from the truth. Ethos. In 2016, when this provision was first to be applied, sir, the constitutional agencies had requested $8.7 billion. The Minister of Finance came and recommended $7.8 billion. And Mr. Speaker, the House proceeded immediately to approve the very recommendation reflecting the reduced amount recommended by the Minister of Finance. In 2017, November 2016, the same, sir, was the case. The constitutional agencies requested $11.3 billion. They recommended $6.8 billion. The very GCOM requested $5.8 billion. They recommended the grand sum of $2 billion. The explanations read thus, and I quote, "Recommended allocation is made in context of existing fiscal space and the consideration of the agency's request within national development priorities. This, sir, was the information the House was expected and promptly proceeded to approve. So all of this noise that is being made about removing the executive and not having the Minister of Finance cut the budgets of the constitutional agencies is in fact nothing different from everything else that is said by the APNU AFC. That's correct. That's correct, sir. And so, Mr. Speaker, the world is not deceived. The world is not fooled by this newfound proclamation that the APNU AFC is somehow a friend to the constitutional agency. The fact of the matter is the 2015 amendment did absolutely nothing whatsoever as it relates to changing the arrangements with respect to the budget process. It still closed the Minister of Finance with the right to cut those budgets, and that right was still abundantly exercised, as is reflected by these numbers. But they will go around saying, as they always do, they will go around saying that this amendment was intended to safeguard the financial autonomy of the constitutional agency. Once again, sir, nobody believes them then, as indeed nobody believes them now. Make no mistake of it, sir. Make no mistake of it. Make no mistake of it, sir, that like everything else uttered by the APNU AFC, they could not be believed. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues on this side of the House have already expounded abundantly on what is problematic about the 2015 amendment. And if I might, sir, in wrapping up the debate, reiterate two or three fundamental, simple but fundamental points as they relate to why the 2015 amendments collided with the Constitution and why the current amendment is necessary to realign the budget process within the constitutional framework. I would do so as follows. First of all, Mr. Speaker, as I indicated when I spoke on the first occasion this afternoon, Article 171 is crystal clear. It's crystal clear. The budgets, my apologies, Article 222A is crystal clear. The budgets of the constitutional agencies shall be considered, shall be reviewed and approved by the National Assembly as part of the process of the determination of the national budget. And that is for a very simple reason. It is for the reason that the Honourable Member, Ms. Gail Teixeira, pointed out so many years ago, that it is impossible, it is well nigh impossible to ask this House to vote on a budget when all they have is the expenditure for some agency, no information on the fiscal framework, no information on the revenues of government, no information on anticipated growth in the economy, no information on other potential expenditure requirements in government. But they're being asked, this House, sir, by the 2015 procedure, was being treated with the contemptuous request of being asked to vote on budgets of agencies without knowing anything about what was happening in the rest of the economy. In direct contravention of the requirements of 222A, which said very clearly that constitutional agencies should be considered as part of the national budget. And in violation, I hasten to add, of the principle that the budget should be comprehensive. It should present a complete picture of revenues and expenditure of the state. If it is to be meaningfully analyzed, and if sensible decisions are to emerge from that analysis. Mr. Speaker, the distinguished Attorney General drew attention also to Article 218. That article states very clearly that the minister responsible for finance or any other minister designated by the President shall cause to be laid before the National Assembly estimates of the revenues and expenditure of Guyana for that year. And the distinguished Attorney General pointed out, very astutely as he always does, that it didn't say the revenues and expenditure of Guyana except for those relating to constitutional agencies. It said very clearly the revenues and expenditure of Guyana, reinforcing the principles of unity and comprehensiveness in the budget. One comprehensive budget. 218 reinforces that principle. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, as I pointed out in my earlier presentation, Article 171 is crystal clear. Matters of a financial nature are vested in the executive. It is the executive that is accountable for the realization of fiscal outcomes. And it is for that reason, enshrined by centuries of practice in parliaments such as ours, enshrined in our Constitution, and repeated in our standing orders, that matters of a financial nature can only come to this House, submitted by the minister responsible for finance or any other minister so designated by the President, with the prior consent and agreement of the Cabinet, clearly indicating the role of the executive in fiscal and financial matters. All three of these constitutional articles were collided and violated, and violated by the amendments that were inserted in 2015. So in 2015, sir, all that was taking place was the usual APNU AFC political grandstanding. Like I said, they have by now become notorious for thumping their chests. They have become, yes, they have gained some degree, a fair degree of notoriety for many things. But foremost amongst these is for thumping their chests and proclaiming themselves to be so righteous. What was it? What was the phrase? Sanctimonious. Sanctimonious gangstering, sir. They have become famous for thumping their chests and proclaiming their virtues, when in fact their actions speak louder than their words. Thumping. Absolutely, Attorney General. They have become notorious, if I might repeat it for emphasis, for added emphasis. The APNU AFC has become notorious for thumping their chests and proclaiming their self-righteousness, when in fact their actions reveal their true nature. But the people of Guyana are watching, and the world has been watching, and the people of Guyana are wiser, and the world is wiser, sir. So nobody believes all of this self-righteousness that they're carrying on with. Nobody believes all of this grandstanding that they're engaged in. The truth is, sir, that the ethos, to use their word, the ethos of the APNU AFC is well known. And that is that they lack, sir, how could I forget this? How could I forget this? Sometime last year, sir, I was traveling down Main Street and I saw lots of green banners adorning the electric poles. These banners were emblazoned with big letters indicating 3 words: honesty, decency, and integrity. Words yet more chest-thumping. Words proclaiming their honesty and their decency and their integrity. Little did we know, put aside their election shenanigans. Put aside their election shenanigans, if one could ever put those aside. Put aside their shenanigans. Little did we know that these self-proclaimed honest and decent people with integrity were busy pilfering the public purse to buy themselves bracelets, bangles, and earrings. Bed sheets and beds. Little did we know, sir, emblazoning the streets of Guyana with the words honesty, decency, and integrity. Mr. Speaker, little did we know that they were busy acquiring bangles, bracelets, and earrings. Shame on them, sir. Shame on them. And so, Mr. Speaker, I will conclude by saying, sir, that this amendment that we have brought today finally puts to rest this ridiculous charade that they've been engaging in for the last 5 years, pretending somehow to be preserving the financial autonomy of these constitutional agencies when they were busy cutting their budgets. And might I say, sir, that Mr. Ramjatan, the honourable member, perhaps did not read the bill as closely as he should have. Because we have done nothing to tamper with the provisions that deal with the lump sum allocation. We have done absolutely nothing to tamper with those provisions. Those provisions are intact. But in his usual manner, and in his party's usual manner, he comes here with all sorts of drama and histrionics, trying to whip up a public frenzy, trying to mislead people that somehow we are tampering with the provisions as they relate to a lump sum. Fortunately, sir, the people of Guyana know better than to believe anything that he or his colleagues have to say. With those words, sir, I commend once again this Fiscal Management and Accountability Amendment Bill 2021 to this Honourable House. I add, sir, that I have circulated a small amendment. I believe that is now before honourable members, which I will move at the appropriate time. And I trust, sir, that Mr. Ramjatan, the honourable member, and now sole representative of his party, will see it fit to do the honest and decent thing. To do the honest and decent thing and vote for this highly meritorious and most worthy piece of legislation. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, I now put the question that the Fiscal Management and Accountability Amendment Bill 2020, Bill number 1 of 20, let me reread that. The Fiscal Management and Accountability Amendment Bill 2021, Bill number 1 of 2021, be read a second time. Those in favor say aye.